Hey there, everybody. It's once again Sage from Fandom City, and this time we are here with a Game of Thrones update. That's right. If you've listened to some of our older content on some of our older podcasts, whether it be Fandom Fraternity back in the day, or Game of Thrones miniseries we did, or Fandom Cantina, we have covered a lot of Game of Thrones in the past. As you know, earlier this year, Game of Thrones Season 8, the much divisive Season 8, aired. And much like The Last Jedi did with Star Wars, kind of split the fan base, which, isn't always a great thing. I myself didn't mind Season 8 is the most memorable, not necessarily. But that has come and gone in what has been a absolute crazy 24-hour period revolving around Game of Thrones news and or news about people that had something to do with Game of Thrones. We started off with Benioff and Weiss exiting Star Wars. We'll have more information on that on our Star Wars Wastelands podcast, which will air Wednesday night, 9 p.m. Eastern. But for this video, we're going to focus in on what has been a crazy turn of events. We had the Game of Thrones prequel set in the Age of the Heroes working title Blood Moon, which has been under production for quite some time, set thousands of years before the events of Game of Thrones. And the interesting thing here is not only was it the cast led by Naomi Watts, which is a pretty huge name, they were well into production. They'd filmed their pilot episode. We had been given indication, at latest a couple weeks ago, that this series was not only going to be picked up, but would likely air in the fall of 2020. So yesterday, HBO had their little shareholder get-together, and not only did we find out that the prequel, Blood Moon, had been not picked up, the project had been dropped altogether with no attempt at revival, which stunned me. I got the news from my wife, and that... I was at work at the time, and I was just flabbergasted. I couldn't believe that. I would have bet all the money in the world that that's what we would be doing. That's what we'd be watching, the Blood Moon prequel. That has come and gone before we even got to see it, which is interesting. I mainly find it interesting because it was just a couple hours later, while I had my friend's girlfriend reach out to me, telling me, isn't it a crazy day that in one day we've seen one Game of Thrones prequel canceled and the other one picked up for a full season order? Now, everybody's known for a while there has been quite a few Game of Thrones prequels in the works. I was always of the opinion, because of the just raging success of Game of Thrones, that you would definitely see more than one of these things picked up. And that remains to be seen. But the one that did get picked up is based on the Fire and Blood novel, or at least a story out of there. And the new show is going to be titled House of the Dragon, appealing to all those Daenerys and Targaryen fans or dragon fans out there. The show is going to be set 300 years prior to the events of Game of Thrones, so we're definitely much closer to the current timeline that we're used to. My guess is you'll see a bunch of major houses in this. You'll see probably some big time dragons, including the big guy himself, Mr. Dread. The thing that I find curious here, though, is this has sort of happened in a very non-normal way, which I think we can all agree Game of Thrones was anything but normal. But the show that had all the media behind it and had a full cast and a completed pilot gets dropped, wasn't picked up for a season, and that's just it. The project is dead. But the show that we've only recently heard of, that does not have a cast, that does not have a pilot, gets a full season order. That's a little odd. It's definitely not normal practice, that's for sure. The industry typically doesn't function that way. I think a couple of factors are at play here. One of them being, hey, if you're going to have a heavy dragon show set 300 years prior to the events of Game of Thrones, there's going to be a lot of CGI and big budget stuff. They're not going to be starting with the small budget that Game of Thrones started with. My guess is it's going to be big budget right out of the gate, which may affect their ability to have multiple series running at once. And the other thing here, let's be honest, Targaryen fans are absolutely everywhere. And not saying I'm not one of them. I'm more of a House Stark guy myself. But this is going to appeal to the fans more. This is probably more mainstream. And at the end of the day, I think, just you're not getting, Dany per se, but you are getting her house. You are getting the dragons. It's going to have a very Game of Thrones feel to it, is my guess. I have no idea when we're going to see this project, though. The Blood Moon was set for a 2020 fall release. I don't see these guys making that date. That's just the way it goes. What do you guys want to see, though, out of a Game of Thrones prequel? Are you excited this is the one that got picked up? Are you upset that Blood Moon's dropped? Do you have something else in mind that you want to see? Comment below. We'd love to hear what you have to say. We do reply to everybody that we can. Leave a like, click the subscribe button, and we'll see you next time here on Fandom City.